What's up, guys? I'm so excited to announce that we have partnered with Coaching for Literacy, and you can read more about them at coachingforliteracy.org or follow them on social media at Coaching for Literacy. Your subscription to Bluff City NIL is 100% tax deductible because of our partnership together. Thank you for supporting Memphis Tiger student athletes and helping promote the monumental cause of childhood literacy.
Carmigo makes it easy to sell your car while still getting the best price. Instead of taking your car from dealership to compare offers, Carmigo uses their virtual vehicle scanning technology to bring the dealerships to you. Simply use your phone to take a few pictures of your car, answer a few questions, and they'll share your car's listing with a whole network of buyers. And you can do it all from your phone. Buyers typically receive multiple offers on their cars in as little as a day. Plus, Carmigo handles all the paperwork. They'll even pick it up.
Look, have mercy on me.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of On the Bluff, presented by Carmigo, the easiest way to sell your car on the internet. We tell you this every single week. It is literally as easy as it gets. If you click the link in the description, you get $350 off. The full sale fee will be waived. All you got to do, put in some personal information, put in your vehicle information, take 13 pictures that are pre-outlined for you of your vehicle, send it into Carmigo, and then they really handle the rest. Honestly, from there, it's about as easy as it gets. 24 hours. Within 24 hours, you'll get a price on your car of what someone wants to pay for it. They'll come pick it up. They'll do the paperwork for you. It is literally extremely easy. Don't you think so, Gabe?
Yeah, it's worry-free. It's hassle-free. Nationwide network of dealers. You hear us talk about it every single week, but make sure you go in the description, click on that link, $350, full sale fee, completely gone. And when you upload, Christian's done it before, 13 pictures, make, model, they'll hook you up. It's easy. It's very, very simple.
So if you want to sell your car today, as we've said multiple times, click the link in the description, head over to Carmigo and get it taken care of. As you can see, we are not in studio this week. I just got back from vacation. Kenny is currently at the beach. Gabe is heading out to Florida tomorrow, correct?
Yes, sir. Be there at 5 p.m.
Gabe is headed to Davie, Florida for a wedding, so we are all kind of in travel plans right now. So we will be
summer, brother.
Over Zoom this week or over StreamYard this week.
I have a big ass head. That's what this whole thing is like exposing to me. My head is big as hell. It takes up the whole damn screen.
It's not small, especially compared to mine. Mine is quite small.
Like, it's crazy. Like, the up close shot too, I'm just substantially uglier. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like the production value when Kenny's handling this whole thing and
makes it way better.
You know, it takes like at least 10 pounds off me. It makes my head look a little smaller, right? Like,
yeah, next week we'll be back in studio. This week we'll be handling it remotely. So it is what it is. Everybody knows we're not fans of it, but sometimes you got to do what you got to do. Gabe, let's get right into it. This week on Thursday afternoon, I believe Javon Quinerly finally committed. We talked about it last week on the show. Is it going to happen? What's going on behind closed doors? I know the panic meter might have not been at 10 yet for fans, but it was rising quickly, especially coming off the visit with no commitment. So people were a little bit worried on, is he going to visit somewhere else? Is someone else offering more money? What's going on? Ultimately, Penny Hardaway and the staff get it done. They now have their point guard. What did you think about this addition from Penny and the staff?
We talked about it even before it happened because we had a feeling it was going to happen. You didn't know who else was involved. There were rumors of Providence, but that didn't really come to fruition. But we've really covered it. Like, you have a true point guard. One more year for this guy. Experience is all get out. He's going to get here, probably cash in on some NIL checks, make sure all the ducks are in a row offensively. He fits what they need, and that is very clearly a table setter and maybe a guy who could step out and score, shoot a three. But I think Penny Hardaway, I mean, just looking at how this all has gone over his era, he has learned, especially last year, having that veteran table setter makes everything go so much smoother. Obviously, he's not Kendrick Davis on the offensive end, but you don't necessarily need Kendrick Davis. You have dudes in that starting lineup who can already go get a bucket. And David Jones, Caleb Mills, Jordan Brown, if Deandre Williams ends up on campus. So you don't really need that Kendrick Davis level offensive production. But I think night to night he can provide a lot on the offensive end, and he's steady. He's not going to turn the ball over, and he knows what's expected of him.
Yeah, I think he's the perfect addition for this team at point guard. I mean, you're mentioning like what Penny was able to do with Kendrick Davis last year, and Memphis needed that. Like they had to have a number one scorer, they had to have a top scorer to pair along with DeAndre Williams, and they don't need that this year. They need a guy to run the floor, they need a guy to orchestrate the offense, a guy that can get out and run the offense in transition. And I think JQ checks all those boxes. And as you mentioned, he can step out, he can hit threes. Like he's been a very solid three-point shooter throughout his career. And I just love what he brings overall. And that's not even including the veteran experience of being, in college for this long. So I think at point guard this year, Memphis doesn't need a guy that can go score 20 points a game. They need a guy that maybe pass first, but can get a bucket when he needs to. And I think that's what JQ is. So I think he just perfectly fits the system, what Penny wants to do. And I think he perfectly fits his teammates. I mean, imagine the backcourt of JQ and Caleb Mills. Like that's a really, really good collegiate backcourt. And you have two players that, have played different roles before, guys, at different teams and at different levels. So I think they'll mesh together really well in the backcourt. I think they complement each other are very well. I don't think either one of them is a selfish player at all. It's not like Caleb Mills has ever been like a 10 to 15 shot per game player, and neither has Jahvon Quinerly. So I think they'll have no trouble working off of each other and then working it down low to guys like Jordan Brown and if DeAndre is eligible. And then just the rest of this roster. We've talked about this point guard position so much, and now Memphis has JQ and Jalen Young. How do you feel about what Memphis has in the backcourt right now, or just the point guard rotation?
I love it. I think it's fantastic. And not to mention, just look at the damn backcourt rotation. Jonathan Pierre can get in there. Tiafao Leonard will be a reserve. I think that's interesting in itself. This is a dude who's in certain NBA mock drafts rounded or mocked in round number 2. You know what I mean? He probably thought he was going to come here and be a starter, no doubt, and that's up in question right this second. Their rotation's great in itself. You can talk about the starting 5 all you want. Jahvon Quinerly, Caleb Mills, David Jones. If DeAndre Williams gets another year, Jordan Brown. But what they're going to have coming off the bench, it feels like they're not going to skip a beat all that much. Maybe a little less offensively, but defensively they're going to keep up that intensity. I think they have enough options offensively with that second group, if you will. So, I mean, there's going to be options all over the place. And one thing I do want to point out, just about like college basketball in general and what wins, it's a mix of experience and talent. And you have the experience, no doubt. I think if DeAndre comes back, I dropped this to you in your spot on Tuesday with me on my show. If DeAndre comes back, the average age would be 23.8 years old, which is older than the Oklahoma City Thunder. This team's going to be old as hell, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's going to make the AARP jokes. But they would not be, even though these guys are 4th, 5th, 6th year, 7th year with DeAndre players in college, these are guys that were highly thought of. Like, think of Jahvon Quinerly, 5-star out of high school. Jordan Brown, 5-star, McDonald's All-American. Both those guys won 6 man of the year at Power 5 conferences. Like, yeah, you can say, okay, well, it's just about getting experience, but you have a perfect mix of what you need to win in college basketball with the roster they're going into next year with.
I'm okay with not having a heavy freshman team either. I know people love like seeing the 5-stars come in and stuff, and I get it. Like it's exciting, but it hasn't really translated
right
to a team that's made a deep run yet. And I'm sure any Memphis fan you ask, okay, would you like to bring in the number 1 recruiting class and lose in the first or second round of the tournament? Or would you like to bring in a bunch of transfers and go, later into the tournament, maybe a Sweet 16, Elite 8? And that's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer. And that's
right.
And that's what these type of players do. And so many years in Penny Hardaway's tenure, we've seen kind of an exponential growth or a slow growth throughout the year where there's some growing pains in the beginning of the year. And maybe by the time they get to conference play or midway through conference play, we see the team kind of round out into what it can be. But when you have guys like JQ and Jordan Brown, David Jones, all these guys that have so much veteran experience, I don't think you have to wait on that climb as long. Now, with this being almost a completely new team outside of Jaden Hardaway, I do think there will be growing pains. I think it'll take a minute. Like, that's just kind of obvious when it's a completely new team of players. but I just think that learning curve is not as steep, and I think they more quickly get to be the team that they will be, at the end of the year, February, March, and going into tournament time. I think they'll be that team earlier than the year.
Yeah.
And I think that helps you down the line because it's not like a new feeling or a new sense of like, okay, this is the way that it is now. No, it's like, no, this is the way that it's been since mid-December. And you can kind of roll that wave into March.
And the thing is, like, you got to hope that it happens quick. right? Out of conference schedule is brutal, dog. Like, you're on the road at Mizzou. You have A&M. You have the tournament, the early season tournament there.
Virginia,
battle
Clemson.
for Atlantis, and like Virginia. Vandy has been solid now. Like Stackhouse has them going a little bit. Like, you have to be ready to go. So when we're talking about questions for this team in particular, that would be one. How quick do they gel? Because they haven't played with each other and you don't have a lot of continuity. I think the other really more concerning question, at least in the immediate, is eligibility, right? Like Jordan Brown, there's whispers about, okay, will he play till conference play? Because you have to translate some different credits from Louisiana to Memphis that may not be working. Deandre Williams, is he going to get an extra year? I feel positive about it, but it's not a guarantee. So, like, of course, you want to see how quick a new team gels around each other. But I think even more so than that, you just got to see who's going to be on the floor to start the year. Like, that's my biggest concern about what has been put together. And, grand scheme of things, you put together what you can put together this late in the game. And, we have patted Penny Hardaway and this staff on the back every step of the way because it's unbelievable to see what they've been able to put together this late. So you put it together regardless, and then you try to pick up the pieces afterwards and see who's going to be eligible, who isn't.
Yeah. So I got a question for you about, this team with and without DeAndre Williams. Where are they? Like, where do you think they are rankings wise with and without DeAndre Williams?
Without. Let's start with without, and we're gonna go back and forth on this. I would say, I would put them probably top 30, top 25, somewhere in there. I don't see how, even without DeAndre, if say you have to put Nick Jourdain in there, a team of Jordan Brown, Nick Jourdain, David Jones, who's just unbelievably talented, coming over from St. John's, Caleb Mills, who's been around the block 15 times over, who's averaged 13 points a game at multiple spots at good programs, although Florida State, it didn't work out that way. And then Javon Quinerly, who was at the top overall seed last year and was all SEC tourney, had 22 points in the championship game of the SEC tournament last year. I mean, I'd say top 30 at worst is sort of my thought process. I think I saw John Rothstein, who does his top 45 right this second. He said they'd be 30 without DeAndre. He said they'd be borderline top 20-ish with DeAndre in the lineup.
Yeah, I think that's a little bit low as far as with DeAndre, but without, I'm kind of in lockstep with you. I would say they're a top 25 team.
With DeAndre, it's a different deal altogether.
With DeAndre, I really don't see how they're not a top 10 team. We've been saying this literally for weeks now. If they were able to get Javon Quinerly and DeAndre Williams, that they were a top 10 team. I mean, it's a team with probably a top 5 backcourt or front court in the country, and then maybe top 15, top 20 backcourt in the country. Like, how do you say that team is not potentially a top 10 program?
And hell, with like great reserves, a great rotation.
Right. It's not like they don't. It's not like they lack depth.
It's not like they go. It's not like they're going to get outside of their top 5 if DeAndre comes back and they're going to have nobody. You know what I mean? Like I would say at floor if they get DeAndre back. I agree with top 10. Like I would say that. And it's a different type of top 10 than we've seen them sort of preseason top 10 with James Wiseman and some of the number 1 recruiting classes they've had out of high school. But I'd say basement. And it depends on how people vote, because people can, there's some type of Memphis bias still. We can admit that. There's a level of Memphis bias with media members and everything else. But basement is top 15. Like basement should be top 15 if we're being real with ourselves. But I would imagine there's some voters, media members, coaches, whatever it may be, that feel a type of way about Penny, feel a type of way about Memphis, and they want to see it before they believe it. And I feel like there is a possibility, even if they do get DeAndre back, that they don't get ranked as high as a top 15 team. And that's kind of frustrating, but I know what they are.
Kind of wild. Right. Yeah, it's kind of wild because with that team, like we're saying, it's not just the first 5 that you're rolling out. Like you're 8 to 10 deep of players that can be very productive at the collegiate level, either have the potential to be or have been in the past. So, yeah, I think top 15 to me is the absolute floor also with DeAndre because of what he brings. Gabe, let's switch gears a little bit. Let's talk some Memphis football because we are getting closer to that time of the year. Thankfully, thank the Lord. Cannot wait for football season. I know we're both excited and ready. How do you feel going into this year for the Memphis football program?
Seeing is believing, right? Like I think when you look at the schedule, I mean, there's 7 built-in wins, you would think, although they've lost a couple of games the past 2 years that they shouldn't have. I feel like eight wins should be sort of the basement of what they need to accomplish to get people back enthused about the program. But I think for me, there's a level of positivity that I feel on the defensive side of the ball, right?
Agreed.
I mean, like you're so deep over there, and like you have across the D line improved. Adarius Jones from A&M, Josh Ellison from Oklahoma, Derek Hunter was one of the top defensive tackle JUCO players. He's going to be on that defensive line. You add it to guys who started last year, and Jalen Allen and Cormonte Hamilton, who have a bunch of experience under their belt. Chandler Martin was great at East Tennessee State. Jeff Canton-Arku, another guy with a bunch of experience on campus already. And then you just sort of look at that secondary, and it's hard not to get somewhat excited about what they have, right? You have Power 5 bounce backs with experience. Simeon Blair started 30-some-odd games at Arkansas, was the team captain, had 72 tackles last year. He may not be the best in pass coverage, but he's a great run support guy. Greg Rubin's still around. Joel Williams from Kentucky. I mean, you just go up and down the defensive side of the ball, and it's hard for me with what I've seen from Matt Barnes in just 1 year. Obviously, they peaked the back half of the season and looked great in the bowl game. It's hard for me not to be really excited about this being one of the best defenses we've seen in the past decade of Tiger football.
Yeah, totally with you. You mentioned some of the guys, but you know how our lads, they do like projected depth charts every year. So I got that pulled up, and I want to run through this because talent and experience are exactly
loaded,
what
man. They really are kind of loaded.
Yeah. So starting at the defensive end position, you got Jalen Allen, redshirt senior. We know what he brings to the table. Derek Hunter, JUCO transfer that you mentioned, one of the top defensive linemen in junior college level, redshirt junior. Josh Ellison from Oklahoma, redshirt senior. Cormonte Hamilton at the other defensive end, very productive player last year, redshirt junior. They have Chandler Martin projected at one linebacker spot, which, as you said, was incredible at East Tennessee State last year.
90-some-odd tackles, all conference guy.
Be very excited to see what he brings to the table. The youngest starter as a redshirt sophomore. Jeff Canton-Arku at middle linebacker, productive player last year, redshirt senior. Marcus Tillman, who came from Texas, and then JUCO guy, redshirt senior. Greg Rubin at one corner spot, true junior. Simeon Blair at one safety spot, redshirt senior. Joel Williams at the other safety spot, true junior. And then Malik Feaster at the other corner spot as a redshirt senior.
I mean, I just look at, and also Malik Feaster, that's a guy I want people to like actually pay attention to. What his ability and length and speed and strength he is a great cover corner. And he has fit in at a lot of places. He didn't get a whole lot of run at Florida State for whatever reason, but he did get the scholarship and transferred there. But I have a buddy who is a Jacksonville State alum, played offensive line there, and he couldn't stop saying good things about Malik Feaster and talking about how he should still be a Power 5 starting cornerback. And I mean, we go through all this, and another guy that may fly under the radar as a reserve piece along the defensive line as a pass rusher. How about Jalen Joyner?
Yep, FAU transfer.
Like when you just talk about depth and experience pieces, it's night and day from last year. And I think a lot of people ignored last year, Christian, the lack of depth up front was bad, like really bad. And they're not going to run into that unless they have just 2, 3, 4
mass amount of injuries. Yeah.
And I feel like they're beefed up and they have a good secondary that can sort of carry them. But that's different. You know, that's different than what we have come accustomed to when this programs running at peak efficiency,
Right.
running at its peak.
Yeah, and I've been beating the drum and singing the praises of Kyle Pope ever since he got on campus because I think he's an extremely impressive coach. And this is maybe not the most top-heavy unit that he's had as far as talent goes, but the deepest by far. I mean, when you look at the depth that he has up front, he can run 8 guys deep. I think that's going to be extremely helpful for this defense. We know it all starts up front and helps out your corners, helps out your linebackers if your defensive line's good. So if you're running, 7 to 10 deep in the defensive line with players that you feel confident in being on the field, then your defense as a whole is going to excel from that. But another thing I really like about this defense, and I really think this is the recipe for success for any offensive or defensive unit in the country, is when you have a lot of veteran, experienced talent and then young guys behind them that are going to make them continue to work and not allow them to just kind of settle and be like, okay, this is – get complacent. This is my spot. I've held it down for 2 or 3 years. But with the talented young guys and, some of the transfers like Jalen Johnson from Ohio State that had the Matt Barnes connection, like guys like this, I think they help push everyone to be better around them, whether they're on the field or not. So I love the fact that they've got a lot of veteran experience, but they've also got a lot of young, unproven talent that's going to be hungry in fall camp to continue to prove themselves and try to get snaps, whether that's on special teams or in rotation on defense. So I really like where this defense sits, but I feel like where the conversation kind of begins and ends with this team and in the question of their success and how successful can they be? Can they, get back to an AAC championship, or do they suffer from another mediocre season? It really lies on the offense in a conference where scoring has always been. It's crazy because for so long there was never a question. And over the last several years, it's suffered a little bit. And, the lack of playmakers has been pretty obvious. The lack of a running game has been pretty obvious. And it has to be fixed going into this year for this team to be successful. What's the confidence level for you on this offense as a whole?
Like, confidence level for me, I've been struggling with that, dude. Like, I don't know about you. I'm struggling with confidence level because I don't know. I don't know what these guys are going to look like when they actually get their opportunities. And I think more so than anything, there's one piece of confidence I can go into the year and be like, okay, I feel great about that. And that's Seth Hennigan. I feel fine. Feel great about him. He's a talented guy. He knows how to spread the ball around, but just like the past 2 years, or at least last year especially, like, he needs help. And he hasn't had a good run game. They haven't been able to get that going. Now, did they try to do everything they could on the open market in the transfer portal to try to get some old linemen, get some playmakers in the building? Sure as hell they did. But can those guys step up and be what they need to be? Xavier Hill, Marcus Henderson, they need to step up and potentially be those big bodies up front. One at a guard spot, one at a tackle spot. Looks like Chris Morris is in the transfer portal, so that ship has sailed. Who's going to step up in the backfield? I mean, I feel really confident about what Blake Watson can do. He's experienced, has it all ahead of him. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. He could be a playmaker, but is he going to have an O-line in front of him to go make something happen?
Right.
We know about Jay Ducker,
Sutton
Smith. Like, I think they have some pieces in the backfield, but they have to have somebody in front of them that's going to pave the way. And I think also, like, when it comes down to Tim Cramsey, the OC, he's going to have they're going to have to get more inventive with the run game. When we were clicking at peak efficiency, when Darrell Henderson Jr. was running for 2,000 and Patrick Taylor was running for 1,000, the inventiveness and the execution from the guys up front was huge. And you haven't seen that the past 2 years. It's inside zone left, inside zone right, outside zone left. And that's sort of the extent of it. You need to throw in different looks, a counter here, a power there. You just need to start mixing in different things up front, different schemes, and see what happens there. And then wide receiver, I like the talent they have. I don't think they're particularly deep. But Toski Dove is going to have to step up. Mizzou transfer. Demir Blankumsey is going to have to step up. Toledo transfer. And Rock Taylor is a guy I have heard from Cramsey, from Silverfield, from everybody in that building. He's now a junior. They say it's his time. He's got to show it's his time. But this offense is just so unproven. It's hard for me to have any level of confidence in any one unit besides the quarterback position.
Yeah, I would say my curiosity is way higher than my confidence. Not that I don't like what some of these players bring, like the receiving core. I really like the receiving core. Like I really like Demir Blankumsey. I really like Rock Taylor, and I really like Towski Dove. Like
and Joseph Scapes, if he can get some consistency with his hands, who knows?
Right.
Deep
I think they're going to be okay there. It's just about who wants it the most, like who wants to step up. Because Demir and Towski have both been productive at other programs, and it's like, do you come here and same thing we were talking about with complacency? Like, do you come here and is it same old, or do you come here and are you working towards going to the league and being an NFL player? Because we've seen it here, like Calvin Austin, Tony Pollard. Like we've seen guys when they come here and they break out, they go to the NFL. Antonio Gibson, a guy that nobody knew who he was coming out of community college, came in, obviously wanted it and became a relatively high, I think, 3rd round draft pick a couple years ago. So, if these guys feel like they can make it and they want to put the work in, like you have a platform at Memphis and kind of the guys before you have paved the way of Memphis puts running backs and receivers in the league. And for a minute, it was at a pretty high clip. And so now it's just who steps up because you got guys that have been somewhat productive but have never really broke out. So can they break out this season? Same thing in the backfield. I think you have a lot of guys that could be the guy, but does anybody step up or do any two guys step up depending on how deep they want to go at running back? And do they have that clearance up front from the offensive line?
So that's the biggest thing. I think they've had the talent in the backfield for the past couple of years. They just haven't had the dudes up front to go make anything happen. And that's frustrating. And I think it comes down to scheme too. You can't just rid the coaches of all evil in this. Like they have to be able to scheme up and be a little more inventive. And hopefully they can get that done. You have a first-year coach in Jeff Myers. Ryan himself has told me he's going to have more of a hold on the offensive line room because that's getting back to his roots. I like all of the things and the things I've heard and the things I've seen from them so far this offseason, but like again, it's questions. It's not answers. Still questions, not answers. And I think in the wide receiver room, I want very heavily for people to pay attention to Demir Blankumsey. I just feel like that's the type of guy in the AAC out of the slot, maybe split him outside. I feel like his route running's really good. He's got some shakiness. He's got some breakaway speed. I feel like that's the guy ultimately that will step up, but any one of those guys can step up in that group. They just gotta put their mind to it, make something happen in fall camp.
Yep, we'll see how it goes. So we're gonna move on real quick and kind of hit this last topic here, something that you and I talked about on your show on Tuesday, and I think it's probably, if not one of the biggest stories in sports right now. The NFL is having a little bit of issues with running backs and paying them. And we saw Christian McCaffrey, Jonathan Taylor, Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, all these guys speak out about running back contracts and kind of the devaluement of running backs, which we've seen over years, but now we're seeing in contract terms, like even over the last several years when we've heard the running back position was devalued. Christian McCaffrey was still getting paid. Alvin Kamara was still getting paid. Zeke was getting paid. Like all these top level running backs were still getting paid at that point. And I think it was on Monday or Tuesday, Saquon Barkley, no long-term deal, didn't sign his franchise tag. Josh Jacobs, no long-term deal, didn't sign his franchise tag. Tony Pollard, no long-term deal for the Cowboys, but did sign his franchise tag. So this crazy phenomenon that's going on right now with the running backs, and you're seeing all of them speak out on it.
We've seen it for a while.
We've seen it, but this is like it coming to a head. Like it's never been this prevalent, and now we see all these guys speaking out on it, and it's pretty wild.
I get like the thought process behind not paying a running back crazy $15 million, $20 million money. Like I get that, but if you've been sort of watching the trends, I don't know if there's any running backs asking for that type of $15 million, $20 million a year. I think it's more about guarantees and security. And it's strange to see almost every situation they're electing not to pay that person. And I don't think every situation is built the same. And I brought this stat up with you. Like Saquon Barkley got Daniel Jones paid. Got Daniel Jones paid. I have to find this really quick. Let me go ahead and pull up these stats for you. I think I have them still in here. Daniel Jones' career with and without Saquon Barkley. With Saquon Barkley on the field. Pass TD to INT, 44-17. Without him, 16-16. With him on the field, 6.9 yards per attempt for his passes. Without him, 6.1. Passer rating, 91.4 with him, 77 without him. So Daniel Jones had a career year last year because Saquon Barkley was leading in receptions, and ran for 1,300 yards and accounted for a lot of their touchdowns. But Daniel Jones is the one who gets paid because he benefits from Saquon being on the field so much, and Saquon doesn't even they're not even thinking about paying him. And then Josh Jacobs, for God's sakes, he led the league in all-purpose yards and rushing yards.
Yeah.
He accounted for 34% of their total yardage last year for the Raiders, and he accounted for 30% of their touchdown production.
Yeah.
There's sometimes you just have to use your head, use your brain about how you were operating and realize who's valuable and who's not. And in those particular situations, the running back is valuable enough to go pay him and give him his guaranteed money, give him some assurances you're going to stand by him for a couple more years. I don't know why that's so hard. I do get the Chiefs, for example, don't have Isaiah Pacheco and Jerick McKinnon and Clyde Edwards. They're not paying running backs, but you can't copycat the Chiefs, right? The Chiefs are the Chiefs. They have Patrick Mahomes, generational, if not the best quarterback of all time. You think he's the best quarterback of all time. He's not that far off for me. You have one of the best pass-catching tight ends of all time. You have the best play caller of all time. You have a top 5, if not top 3 offensive line. I mean, you can't just copycat them and say, oh, well, they're not paying running backs, so why would you pay running backs? That's not fair. They're championship level. 31 out of 32 teams in the NFL are not championship level and ready to win a champion. I mean, it's just I get why you don't want to throw all that money away on the running back position. But I don't think that's really the case here. I think it's more about them getting security, and they're not getting that. They're throwing them away. They're just throwing these great players out with nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, and I see it. I see it both ways, and we talked about this on Tuesday as well. So I'm going to kind of give the other side of it. And this is the tweet that really got everybody fired up. It was Matt Miller's tweet, who is a scout, used to be with Bleacher Report, and he's not anymore. I think he does his own thing
He's
now.
on ESPN during draft season.
I love Matt Miller. I think Matt Miller is the best draft guy. Absolutely. I mean, I'm not saying I agree with all of his takes and stuff, but I think he is the most intelligent guy when it comes to drafts.
I would disagree. I think he made a database and is a hardworking guy, and he's not bad by any stretch of the imagination. I just think that database, NFL Draft Scout, and how much work he's put in got him to the places he's gone. I don't think I think his comparisons and everything aren't that good, but that's beside the point. You go ahead.
Yeah. So the tweet said, been saying it for years. Draft a running back, play the running back. If he's good, franchise tag the running back one time, and then draft a running back. He's not wrong. I mean, I don't think he's wrong.
I don't think he's wrong.
It works. It works. You've seen teams around the league do it.
If you get a dude that's just otherworldly, like Christian McCaffrey, though, what are you going to let him walk?
I mean, there are
a guy that catches for 1,000 and runs for 1,000. You just.
Right. I know. I think there are exceptions. I absolutely think there are exceptions. I think guys like McCaffrey and Kamara and guys that offer Eckler. I don't understand the Eckler not getting
There's
paid.
But there's less exceptions these days. Is the only thing I would push back against. So no one's. It's just running backs as a whole is sort of how they're being grouped.
Right. But then you have the situation like Josh Jacobs. I get it. Yes, he accounted for a ton of the production. I think Josh Jacobs is a talented player and has been. But I think there are many running backs that you plug in and they put up similar numbers. I mean, look at Dalvin Cook, 4-time Pro Bowler. He just got cut because Alexander Madison, a guy behind him with no draft pedigree and really isn't getting paid much, is going to come in and put up very similar numbers in the same system with the same players. And that's the argument to it. I mean, Ezekiel Elliott was a guy forever that was one of the top running backs in the league. And then it was people saying, well, you can put anybody behind the offensive line and they can run. Well, Tony Pollard was a Pro Bowler in 2022 after, I think the most carries he had before this season was 106, and he had 193 this year, went over 1,000 yards. So I just think that it is a position that if you have an offensive line, if you have a good scheme, productivity is going to happen. Like there's going to be productivity. There's levels. Name a situation where a team has a good offensive line and a good offense but doesn't have a productive running back is a difficult thing to do.
But like, think about the Raiders, man. Again, back to Josh Jacobs. He caught for 400 yards too this year. So he did
he's
a good
dual
job.
threat guy.
He can make it happen. But like their backup running back, you know who it is? Do you know who their two backup running backs are?
Zamir White and Amir Abdullah.
Zamir White. There's no way those guys are stepping in and doing anything close to that.
I'm not saying those guys specifically.
But you deal with what's on your roster and what you can sign.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. But I mean, the running back position it's the easiest position to adjust to in the NFL. Like, look at rookies every single year and what they do. Kenneth Walker last year came in injured, basically didn't practice throughout training camp, and was the runner-up to the Offense of the Year for Garrett Wilson. Rashad Penny, a guy who was literally not productive at all, had a wonderful back half of the 2021 season with Seattle. So, like, there's such a precedent set that you don't have to have an elite running back to win. And I think that was one of the things that the running backs were coming out and saying, though, that I just don't agree with, is that all the great teams, all the top teams check it and they've got a top running back. And it's just not true. I mean, you look at the Chiefs and what they did. You listed the guys that they've had success with. The Buccaneers with Tom Brady. Like, Leonard Fournette is fine. Is he an elite caliber running back?
He was like a 4th overall pick, though, back in
the day. He was. I mean, he was, but he never was that guy. Like, he's never been like an all-pro type running back, especially with the Bucs. Like, he had kind of looks like he's lost a step and not as fast, but still very productive there. Tom Brady liked to dump him off the ball like 10 times a game. Rashad White, extremely productive as a rookie out of Arizona State. So I think you look at the best teams, most of the times they don't have great running backs. They really don't, because they cycle through them. I mean, the Eagles just had Miles Sanders, who had a career year. They let him walk because he's not important to making that system go.
But you know what's strange to me is, okay, they dump Miles Sanders, but then they immediately trade for DeAndre Swift because they know they need a guy in there to be able to take those body blows that's good enough. Like, DeAndre Swift's a good running back. They make sure they have to have that guy.
He's still on a rookie contract.
I get it. It's just, I guess the point for me is, like, the amount of people that are actively siding with front offices here, like, it's strange to me, just because, like, you want, at any job you hold, whether you're a freaking carpenter or a damn radio host or whatever the hell you are, producer, I don't care. You want security and you want there to be guarantees about where you're at in your life and your job. And 100%. I figured this would be more relatable for the running backs, especially considering, like, Josh Jacobs and Saquon Barkley are top 5 at their position. You know what I mean? Like, that you feel like you should have a little bit of security with where you're at and your placement on a team and your placement in the NFL, but they don't have it.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all. Like, that's not where my point comes in. Like, I absolutely agree. Like, it's wild that top 5 running backs aren't getting paid, because if you get a top 5 receiver, like, Jettas, Devontae, like, these guys are
25-30 mil a year.
Yeah, Tyreek Hill at $30 million. Like, the bag that Jettas is going to get will reset the market when he gets paid. Like, so to see the drop off, it is crazy, and it sucks for running backs, because you are the one that's taking the most amount of punishment, and you're not getting the same benefits and security as these receivers are. But at the end of the day, like, from the other perspective, from the GM perspective, running backs are a dime a dozen. Like, they come around all the time. Like, they're everywhere. I think
also, if you pay a guy and give him super assurances, like the 6-year deal for Zeke was the dumb. I mean, that was ridiculous.
Stupid. Yeah, 6 year, $90 million.
6 years. I would never pay a running back. I don't care, like, how old he is. I'm never paying him 6 years worth of money. Just 3 years, 2 years. Let's move forward. Yeah. And here's $10 million, 15, somewhere between $10 and $15 million a year. If he's a top 5 at his position, let's roll. That's all they really want, though. And I mean, I guess ultimately I get it from the sense that, like, once you get to your mid-20s, the amount of punishment you take, someone's going to fall off unless you're Adrian freaking Peterson or something like that.
Right.
And you're going to come back from an ACL and have a career year and run for 2,000 yards. But that does not happen all that often.
No.
I think ultimately we can't. My biggest takeaway is we can't keep acting as if every situation's the same. And I feel like most people are trying. I feel like a lot of these front offices are acting like every situation's the same. Saquon Barkley and Josh Jacobs versus Tony Pollard or Dalvin Cook. Like, that's not the same situation. I'd say Tony Pollard and Dalvin Cook would be more expendable, whereas Saquon Barkley and Josh Jacobs do everything for their team. So it's like I don't think we should just group it all as, running backs don't deserve money. Some running backs still deserve money. You
look at the success the Tennessee Titans have had over the last several years. They don't come within a fraction of that without Derrick Henry.
None.
They absolutely don't. No one's ever staked Ryan Tannehill as an elite quarterback or a top 10 quarterback. He's solid. He's fine. But without Derrick Henry running for 1,700 plus yards a season, that offense doesn't work, and the Titans aren't nearly as productive as a team as they have been, and competitive as a team as they have been over the last several years. So absolutely, I'm with you on that. Situations are different. Guys like Christian McCaffrey and Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry and Alvin Kamara, who we've kind of seen a little bit of a decline from him even on the field. Those guys are different because the offense is built around them. You cannot question that the Tennessee Titans offense is built 100% around Derrick Henry. And you can't argue that the Giants offense works without Saquon Barkley because it's not a very good offense anyway. But if they don't have Saquon Barkley, then they're a non-existent offense. Everything runs through him. So I'm with you. The situations are different, and some running backs are in situations where they should be paid more, and some are just like, okay, we can go get your replacement in the third round next year, and he'll be just as productive. And that's just the realistic part of the situation.
One of my pet peeves through this whole process, one, I already mentioned it, people going straight to the Chiefs. Isaiah Pacheco. It's like, they have Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, the best play caller ever. My other one is everybody wants to point out the bad contracts. Everyone wants to point out, Le'Veon Bell went on a jet ski and, came in and got hurt and sucked with the Jets. One, I think Le'Veon Bell is different than a lot of these running backs where he wanted to party and he took a year off and maybe didn't take care of his body the best. And two, he was also with the damn Adam Gase Jets. He was doomed from the beginning. They sucked. Yeah. But no one wants to talk about Nick Chubb. That's a fine contract. Derrick Henry. That's a fine contract. Christian McCaffrey. That's a fine contract. Everybody wants to do the whole, look, Zeke had 6 years, $90 million. Le'Veon had 4 years, $52 million. Well, what about these guys who got paid on par with that are still kicking around and still top five at their position?
Absolutely. Yeah. Examples for every situation.
I just think it's been, I think running backs have been unfairly treated.
I don't disagree. Absolutely don't disagree. But that's going to wrap us up for this week. Before we get out of here, click the link in the description. Carmigo will take care of you. Get that sale fee waived. And go ahead and get your car sold. Sometimes words are hard. Get your car sold within the next 24 hours. If you're watching on YouTube, like, subscribe, comment, check out all of our other content at bluffcitymedia.co, and we will see you back here next week.
Thank you for listening to On the Bluff. If you enjoyed this episode, leave a rating and a review wherever you download your podcasts. Also, like and subscribe to Bluff City Media's YouTube page. Head over to www.bluffcitymedia.co for comprehensive coverage of Memphis sports and how you can become an insider.